Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, FD for Sage5.tv. Now, today I want to talk about why decentralization matters within the crypto space. And we will use some proper examples of existing projects. Some you might hold and others you might not. And you might not like what we're going to say about some of these projects. But just bear with me. Before I jump into this week's discussion, guys, around decentralization, please note that I'm not a financial advisor. Here I'm just sharing my thoughts based on some facts that we've come across when we did our research for this particular video. Because I think it is very important. People do claim for all sorts of reasons that a crypto project is decentralized, but is it? And what other projects do we view as almost completely decentralized, if there is anything like that or anything of that sort? So guys, before I jump into this, please note that I'm not a financial advisor, and if you're from the UK, you should not be watching this content because the authorities are trying to protect you. They love you very much. They don't want you to lose all your funds. So if you are retail, you should not be watching this video. And across the board, please guys, do your own research after watching this video. This video is not one that you should just use as your yardstick, jump into any of the crypto projects we're going to be covering in this video today. That said, let's talk decentralization. Why does it matter? Well, I'm going to try and give you some very brief background before we jump into some of the examples we are talking about. So the global financial crisis in 2008 showed the fundamental problems of trusting an over-leveraged banking system or financial system. It also provided a timely example of how governments around the world implement substantial capital controls on citizens during times of a crisis. A different kind of control, of course, was on display during the 2020 pandemic, where it became clear that those in positions of power can change the fortunes of a whole nation or group of people at the stroke of a pen, for better or for worse. For example, in the UK, those whose industries were declared key workers continued to go to work and taxed at the same rate as those who were paid by the government, as well as the people who were going to work. We are going to be paying for that. We kept working, but we're also paying the debt, even though we didn't benefit from the debt. Work that one up. This is just one example of centralization at work. Another example involves banks taking unilateral action using the veil of regulations to debank customers for reasons that are only known to them, no one else. And it is also common knowledge that centralized systems are terrible when it comes to keeping user information and their data safe. By contrast, a fully decentralized system doesn't have an off-switch, and it doesn't have a way for nefarious forces to impose their will on the applications built on top of it. To accomplish this, any system requires substantial redundancy in both compute and storage of data, because any point of failure in these areas can be exploited. Here we are referring to decentralization. The more sensitive the information being stored, the more redundancy and security is required, and the more decentralization matters. Blockchain-based systems are the substrate for this decentralization. Where have we had substrate? Oh, Polkadot. Blockchain-based systems, like I said, are the substrate for this decentralization because their immutability provides the primitive, for example, tokens, necessary to incentivize cooperation and coordination among the numerous actors who make up these systems and power their redundancy. Once these systems are launched, they become essentially unkillable. The benefits of building applications on top of such a system are substantial. Not only is highly sensitive information secured and available globally, but currency is now a native primitive of the medium. These decentralized applications operate on a more complex infrastructure than today's web, but they have access to an instantaneous and global pool of currency, value, and information that today's web, where data is stored in silos of individual corporations, cannot provide. And here, think of the likes of Google, Meta, otherwise commonly known as Facebook, Microsoft Corporation, to name just a few. As importantly, the data these apps secure is fully owned and controlled by their end users rather than the applications themselves. This opens up a wealth of new use cases which could not exist without a decentralized infrastructure. Yes, it is true that this decentralization paradigm requires that end users mostly pay upfront to interact or enjoy the benefits of such a system. On the surface, many of the design goals of a decentralized blockchain-based platform can be accomplished both faster and cheaper by using existing platforms. A developer can always build a centralized application or even a centralized currency at a fraction of the cost of doing the same on a decentralized platform, because the decentralized platform will, by definition, have many redundancies in its processes and storage. But if you care to know how other blockchain networks are dealing with these tricky issues, I would like to draw your attention to Polkadot 2.0 in this case, where they are proposing to deal with it in a different manner to most blockchain. Talking of block space instead of blockchain. Worth reading Polkadot latest updates, especially Polkadot 2.0. Now, I hear you say, so why do I have to pay to interact and use applications the internet already provides for free? Why? Well, here's why. Not all data is created equal. That statement is loaded, talking from fake news, misleading information, factual, and so forth, manipulated data, and so forth. So not all data is created equal, but in this case, it might be for other reasons why that statement holds so much water. Certain elements of value, for example, the bits representing ownership of digital currency, personal identity, or titles to assets are highly sensitive. In a centralized system, the following players can all directly change the value of any balances they come into contact. For example, a developer who controls the release or update of the application's code. Here, think of your banking. Your bank could wipe your balances at the stroke of a pen because your money isn't really your money if you did know that. Someone else controls when it is yours. So your ownership of that money or that digital cash is only temporary. It's not yours. Governments can also freeze individual bank accounts at will, and there's nothing you or anyone can do about it. The platform where the data is stored, I'm sure many of you have been logged out of your social media platforms for one reason or another, and you understand how helpless felt when that happened to you. Yep, that's another example of why data, we say, is created unequally. It's not created the same. And we also have the servers which run the application's code. All those annoying hosting error messages where the servers storing your data have either been compromised or simply frozen for one reason or another. This then begs the question, if you are into crypto, why the hell would you then want to take part in a blockchain network that is data hosted on Amazon Web Services or Google or Microsoft? Amazon's Web Services and Microsoft Azure operate much of the infrastructure of the web today and are two of the most common clouds where applications are deployed. Each of the individual servers which make up these computing and storage clouds are controlled by a single entity. This means that anything running on or stored within them is completely at the mercy of those companies. Just think about that. That is a single point of failure. And the government agencies as well may require them to do things against their will. They've got no power. If they don't follow, they get shut down. Data can easily be lost, censored, altered, sold, or hacked. This is because there is only one single point of failure. That is very important. I'm sure the reasons will be several, but the overriding logic from an investor's perspective will be to make money. It doesn't matter whether it's hosted on Amazon or not. Is the number going up? I think that's what most of us subscribe to, right? The philosophy can follow later. Philosophy principles later. First and foremost, number up, right? We've seen that with Memecoin. Anyway, as you can tell, even when one of these centralized entities intend to operate with good faith, the actions of governments, police forces, regulators, and hackers can easily turn their hands against their users and censor, modify, or steal the balances they are supposed to protect. The weakness here is inherent in the design of such centralized systems. That is quite important to note. A typical user would trust a typical centralized application despite its potential vulnerabilities with everyday data and computation. Typically, only banks and governments are trusted sufficiently to maintain custody of the most sensitive information. You're talking of the balances of your wealth and your identity. But these entities are also subject to the very human forces of hubris, corruption, and theft. While decentralization is crucially important, not all blockchain-based systems are decentralized. Decentralization is a scale which can be measured along a number of dimensions, but fundamentally, it comes down to how many players in the system must be corrupted in order to break the system itself and how likely that is to occur. The more important the assets the system must protect, then the more important it is that true decentralization is achieved, rather than a system which merely pays it lip service or decentralized protocol, this like the other, but you're keeping your stuff on Amazon Web Services. How does that work? Doesn't make any sense. While on this topic, you should also know that this is the very reason why we include decentralization as one of the key elements we review on this channel when we are researching a crypto project, either to invest in or present it to our follower community as part of our DEWA or a risk evaluation series. And then it's up to you to do your own research prior to taking further action. For example, if you do choose invest into a crypto project, you may always want to do your own research. We always urge you to do your own research anyway. So whatever action you take, that's on you. So what makes a blockchain or application decentralized? Like we indicated earlier in the video, this depends on the data handled. How sensitive is it? For example, user personal data is more sensitive than gaming scores. So you will be looking at something that uses maybe a black box of some sort. You know what I'm talking about. So ideally, a decentralized blockchain network must run across hundreds of machines spread around the world. It must be organized to be permissionless, requiring no gatekeepers, performant, and secure enough to create a strong and decentralized data layer for the new web. Such a blockchain must combine the features of partition-resistant networking, serverless compute, and distributed storage to be deemed truly decentralized. Take Bitcoin, for example. It is sufficiently decentralized for certain parts of a decentralized finance system or financial system. And here we are talking of transfer of funds, storing value, and performing on-chain transactions. But it isn't ideal for things like gaming due to the Bitcoin network's issues with scaling and speed. Gaming will require speed because code is being executed at a faster rate. On the other hand, a blockchain network such as Solana may be suitable for gaming, but not ideal for handling high-value financial transactions. Why? Because it's got some weaknesses around security and reliability. So it fails on that part of decentralization. This is not to say that developers and users won't try to to use a hammer where, say, a spanner or screwdriver is required, but that still doesn't change what each is fundamentally suited for. Moreover, even though Bitcoin and Ethereum are often lauded for their level of decentralization, they also suffer their fair share of deficiencies when it comes to full or complete decentralization. Bitcoin, for example, is over 52% of its mining power controlled by just 3 pools. I don't know if that picture has changed, but I think it's still 3 pools. On top of that, running mining nodes currently requires expensive hardware, which increases the barrier to entry and reduces the incentives for nodes to join over time. Newer networks often trade the hope of decentralization for the operational efficiencies provided by more centralized implementations, which use either limited validator sets or fully permissioned networks. Yeah, think of the likes of Arbitrum, which has got 1 validator. That's ridiculous. Most Ethereum layer 2s, they are centralized. That is ridiculous, okay? And if you go to Solana, for example, you know their nodes are not that many. Why? Because when the system goes down, they always come together and talk about it. Because if they were fully decentralized, that will not even happen, okay? So I'm just dishing out as I see it. Anyway, this violates one of the fundamental tenets of a truly decentralized network. That its value is protected by its level of redundancy among independent nodes. In order to maintain real decentralization, if there is anything of that sort, the network needs to allow permissionless participation from prospective node operators and not incentivize pooling. To address these concerns, some newer blockchains such as NEAR use a staking mechanism called threshold proof of stake, which is specifically designed to be both deterministic and broadly fair, so it does not incentivize pooling of large validators, and it encourages broad participation from nodes. Finally, any decentralized network needs users for it to be sustainable, so any blockchain network, without naming any names here, needs decentralized app that users actually want to use, not just create apps that are going to be there lying idle, no one is using. It needs to be developer friendly to enable developers to come and go as they please, not come up with some smartest developer language requirement that no one is interested in. You know which one I'm talking about. And liquidity is also one of those things that is underrated by blockchain network designers and developers. There are examples everywhere where networks have suffered standard growth due to lack of liquidity. Again, not mentioning names here. Yes, you could be forgiven for thinking that this is just too much for your average retail investor delve into before they make an investment decision, and my response to that will be absolute. But that's why we choose to dive into the research part of your journey here at Sage5.tv, to give you all the information on a platter so that when the time comes, you do less of the research, but your own research to refine the research we're giving you as a platform. So before you leave, please consider subscribing to our channel. We don't feed you guys junk. We give you quality information that you will not get fed from anywhere else. Others are just moon boys, or they're just after those views and increasing their viewer number. For us, we only give you options or directions that point you to perform your own research. Guys, FD for Sage5.tv signing out for now. Bye.